It is estimated that 18% of the general population has a mental illness. However, of that 18%, 44% of those are in jail and 37% of those are in prison. This is according to the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Service Administration. You see, there is an unprecedented number of those who are mentally ill and who are in some sort of confinement, even though those who are already mentally ill, on average, have less sentencing time and lighter sentencing as a whole. You see, even with the justice system being extremely lenient on the mentally ill, there's still very high rates of incarceration for the mentally ill. Yes, there's many different forms of mental illness. Mental illness exists and it is a very big problem within our country. But the mental illness can be very light, such as anxiety, ranging to very heavy ones, such as insanity. With this broad of a term, there's a need for specifics when it comes to mental illness, especially when talking about sentencing a criminal. If someone commits a crime and they display anxiety or depression, they still fully understand the morality and the consequences for their actions. Therefore, they should not be given lighter sentencing for their wrongdoings against society. They should receive the same and equal sentencing as anyone else who were to commit that crime. Of course, in cases such as insanity, there is precedent for these people to be sent to mental institutions to try and help them, or at least keep them away from society as a whole. Not to mention that there are actual mental illnesses that block your moral judgment and cognitive abilities. Thus, in those cases, different sentencing can be applied because they don't understand that their actions are wrong because their brain is lacking certain moral and cognitive functions. When it comes to criminals with mental illness, unless they have an illness that has been proven to block morality or cognitive function, that is the only case in which different sentencing can be applied. In every other case, sentencing should be equal to those who have any form of mental illness that does not block their judgment. The United States criminal justice system has increasingly assumed the role of some sort of mental health institution in recent years. It's due to this thing called deinstitutionalization, the policy of moving individuals with mental illnesses or disabilities from large state-run institutions into community-based integrated settings. And this allows for those with very minor and very major mental illnesses to be walking out on the streets rather than being in a mental institution. Of course, this is being changed. Thanks to this handsome fellow right here, we're bringing back mental institutions. It's about damn time. But because of this policy going on for so long, those with untreated and or poorly treated mental illnesses are much more likely to encounter law enforcement or to enter the justice system rather than actually getting help. It's because of things like this that you see that disproportionate the amount of mentally ill persons within the jail and within prison. Also I bet you if you go to prison or any confinement, you probably do get a little messed up in the head in the long term. But regardless, the criminal justice system is designed to evaluate behavior, intent, and legal responsibility, rather than serve as some sort of healthcare substitute. It's the justice system. You're bringing justice onto criminals, not, oh, you're depressed? Okay, I'm sorry. Oh, you killed someone though? Yeah, you're going to the mental hospital instead of throwing them in prison or and giving them a death penalty. Using sentencing leniency for some reason to try to compensate for undervalued and underfunded mental health institutions within America, somehow thinking that this form of sentencing leniency on those who are mentally ill is going to somehow deter crime? Like, what are we thinking? No, that's not how deterrence works whatsoever. Thinking that this is an effective way to deter crime at all would undermine the power and rule of law within any society. You see, criminal responsibility is grounded in what is called the mens rea, otherwise known as the guilty mind. It's Latin for the guilty mind. This refers to the mental intent and or actual awareness accompanying a criminal. See, most of those diagnosed with a form of common mental illness retain this capacity for understanding. They know what their actions can be potentially bad and good. And therefore, just because a criminal has some sort of mental illness diagnosis alone, it does not negate the mens rea or justify reducing sentencing on the idea that they didn't know what they were doing was wrong. Conditions such as depression and anxiety, those kinds of disorders, they don't somehow eliminate the awareness or the legality or hell, even the morality of one's own actions. Those with these conditions remain capable of making choices and understanding the outcome of those choices. The case for legal sentencing is that equal sentencing is a fundamental principle of justice that ensures fairness, consistency, and legitimacy within any given justice system. If you go out and commit a crime, and then you go get harshly punished for it, just for someone else to commit that same crime, but just because they claim they have depression and they have anxiety, somehow limits the responsibility of their actions. Thus, even though you got harshly punished for something, someone else who did the same exact thing as you isn't getting harshly punished because they're a little sad. Of course, when it actually blocks your cognitive judgment, that's a different thing. But that's just the thing. Most of these cases that you see, it doesn't block their moral judgment, and still they get off with such light sentences because of it. Not only does this go against everything our so-called egalitarian society values, but it would make one lose faith in the justice system and potentially lose faith in society as a whole. Thus, when offenders with mild or moderate mental illnesses receive reduced sentences for crimes they fully understand and they completely know the outcomes of, it creates unequal treatment. See, the disparity undermines public trust and weakens the moral authority of the justice system. Moreover, granting leniency based on just a diagnosis risks misinterpreting those with mental illnesses as people synonymous with diminished responsibility. Which I guess isn't entirely true. Stereotypes exist for a reason. Regardless, research shows that most individuals with mental illness retain full moral agency and decision-making abilities. I'm getting that one from the association between mental illness and disciplinary confinement and its effect on mental health, a systematic review. Now, yet, even though on average, most mental illnesses don't affect your cognitive abilities, there are actually some mental illnesses that do, thus being the special cases of insanity, bipolar disorder, and schizophrenia, just to mention a few. See, there's a very important distinction needed to be made when talking about mental illness and moral capacity. Mental illness refers to, a clinical diagnosis, whereas moral incapacity refers to the inability to understand right from wrong or the consequences of one's actions. The inability to understand right from wrong is brought about when certain heavy type of mental illnesses block your judgment in ways that you can't control. For example, an individual with depression who commits theft understands the legality and the moral implications of stealing something. In contrast, an individual experiencing severe psychosis, or maybe someone that has schizophrenia and is seeing things that aren't real, more or less someone who cannot distinguish reality from delusion, may lack this understanding entirely. Not to mention things such as bipolar disorder, which completely change the way your brain works and completely change the way your cognitive functions work. Only in cases where severe psychosis is displayed should be the only time in which alternative sentencing can be applied. In every other case, sentencing should be applied equally. Now, there are those who state that all mental health diminishes impulse control. Therefore, all criminals with any form of mental health have less responsibility for their actions. From this point of view, punishment without reduced sentencing is viewed as unjust and ineffective. See, when you have this outlook, rehabilitation is often proposed as a better option to imprisonment. It treats those with mental disorders as if they can't do any wrong, as if they're this high and mighty figure. It's like, I'm just a baby. Oh, they can't do anything bad because they're mentally ill. Even though this line of thinking is fundamentally flawed, as it underrepresents the morality and cognitive abilities of your average person with a mental disorder. You see, accountability and treatment are not mutually exclusive goals. Criminals with mental illness can still receive psychiatric care. They can still go to prison and atone for their crimes and atone for their sins and get help in the same process. Equal sentencing reinforces deterrence. People knowing that, I'm going to go out and commit a crime, and then, I could just say I'm mentally ill, and then bada bing, bada boom, I'm off scot-free. No. That's not how it works. It's not how it should work. You have the exceptions of things that block your cognitive abilities. Those are the only exceptions. But the thing that I keep saying over and over again, and hell, that there's been studies on this, is that just because I have a mental disability, that the judges goes light on you, and the judge is like, depression, ting, and I'm innocent now. Okay, I'm just restating what I've said now. In conclusion, mental illness is a very widespread and serious problem, but it does not inherently eliminate moral responsibility. Individuals with most forms of mental illness retain cognitive and moral awareness. Therefore, they should be sentenced equally when charged with a crime, the same as their non-mentally ill counterparts. only in cases where mental illness is very clearly destroys all forms of moral reasoning and cognitive functions should any alternative sentence even be considered. Maintaining this consistency within society helps those with cognitive mental health issues, as well as keeping the society and public as a whole safe by keeping those individuals who would use their minor forms of mental illness to get away with lighter crimes and committing more crimes as a whole. Taking advantage of our justice system and all. God. And endangering all members of society within the process. I hope I've now shown you the issue with the mentally ill within our justice system. Hello, my name is the Right Wing Lutheran. I'm glad you've watched this far into the video. Please also, I got my Discord up now, so if you guys want to talk to me there, come and join it. Anyway, I know this is a more shorter video here, but I got something in the works. Anyway, thank you for watching.